The people telling you that there is a religious basis for the exclusion of trans people are lying to you. While right-wing extremists will use religious texts to bully marginalized orientations and genders, that is a position the texts themselves do not support. Love for the divine does not leave room for hate for other people, and anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. Because traditions around the world have stories illustrating that the divine is too vast to get caught up in petty drama about binary gender assignment. In some traditions, gods themselves throw their assigned gender to the wind. And I don't just mean stories like Thor going to get the necklace Brisingamen back, where he put on drag to pretend to be Freya. I'm also talking about Loki, who changed himself into a mare so convincingly that he gave birth, and that 8-legged foal grew up to be Odin's horse. I'm also talking about Egyptian gods, like Hapi and Wajwer. And I don't speak Egyptian, so I probably pronounced that wrong. They're referred to as masculine, but depicted as having breasts in the same manner as Egyptian mother goddesses. And I'm talking about Kuan Yin in Buddhism, where earliest myths depict a masculine figure, but who shows up in the majority of modern sources as female. So the ones who claim a Christian bias for their disdain for trans people, you know, the same ones that claim that being made in God's image makes it a sin to change your body, but they spend their whole lives on yo-yo diets and bleaching their hair blonde. They want to make a huge fuss about what they think the Bible is telling them about gender. But as always, they're pretending that the historical context in which it was written did not exist. The verses they reach for first are in Deuteronomy and deal with banning men who had been castrated from being full members of the community. And we all know that trans identities are much more than surgery, but let's look at some historical context. At the time that was written, the Jewish people were a small tribal group trying to establish themselves as an autonomous nation. What did they need for that? They needed numbers. Favoring people who could add to the population was a purely practical concern that, for obvious reasons, no longer applies. During the Babylonian exile, they became familiar with eunuchs and the space they held outside the gender binary in Babylonian society. And rabbinical and overall cultural views evolved. By the beginning of the Common Era, Judaism recognized 6 to 8 different genders, depending on which scholars you read. And as a trans Jewish friend points out, whether you count cisgender people. And that is the Judaism that Jesus grew up in. So when Jesus was asked how important it was for people to follow prescribed gender roles by marrying and having children, he answered by validating not just people's reproductive choices, but their whole identities. He said, there are those who are born eunuchs, those who are made eunuchs by the hands of others, and those who choose to live as eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven. The one who can accept it, should accept it. The language was different then, obviously, but in modern terms, what he was saying was, transgender and intersex people exist. Deal with it. There is no way to reconcile the love for humanity that faith as a concept requires, regardless of what faith you follow, with the choice to treat a class of people as inferior or as a threat. The idea that it's possible to love people while fearing and despising who they are is a lie created solely for the purpose of having an excuse to be cruel. Trans folks, your body is holy. Your identity is holy. The divine is too big and too diverse to hold space for narrow-minded prescribed categories. And having been cataloged incorrectly on the first pass does not make you unworthy. Your creation was no less of a gift to the world, because you yourself had a hand in it. That makes it more beautiful, not less. Cisgender folks, you do not get to sit this one out. An ally is not someone who just isn't an active threat. Being an ally is a commitment to stand and fight when people you are allied with are under threat. To be an ally to the trans community is to stand up and fight right now. There is no such thing as someone else's oppression.